Hey, everybody. Welcome to another Dentistry Unmasked. I'm Dr. Pamela Maragliano-Muniz. With me, as always, my partner in crime.
Hello, Dr. David Rice. How are you, Dr. Pam?
I am doing so incredibly well. Now, I am expecting, you might not notice this because you're a dude, but today I'm wearing like a black shirt with my black chair just so it sort of blends in. And I'm doing that intentionally because we're talking about single shade composite systems. Can they do it all? If they can't, what are they doing? What can they, what they can't they do? So first things first, thank you to Tokiyama Dental for bringing on Dr. Peter Auster, one of our absolute favorite guests. Welcome, Peter.
Thank you very much. I have a very quick single shade composite story to start with.
Ooh, I love it.
Yes.
Yes. So I was with a friend the other day, and I had borrowed his block as a dentist, and I borrowed his block for charging my phone. And I left there, and he sent me something kind of outraged later saying, "You never gave me my block back." So I said, "No, I didn't. I had taken off the actual charger, this part over here, but I left the block there." So he calls me the next day and he says, "I'm really sorry. It blended in really well into the wall like omnichroma."
Oh my God. I love that so much because I literally, on my way home today, saw a post of somebody buying like their 15th charger for leaving their block in the wall because it blended in with the wall. So
Exactly.
very apropos.
Oh, I love that. Can we make that a new adjective? Like it's so omnichroma of it or something like that.
Omnichromified.
It's super omnichromified. So, well, let's get right into it. Talking about omnichroma. And obviously omnichroma is one of the single shade composite systems out there. I know you've had tons of opportunities to play with a bunch of them out there. What's your take? Like, could a dentist seriously just buy a single shade composite system and like that's it for their inventory?
Yes and no. So here's my thought, because I've been doing these for a long time now. I figured I started about a year before maybe 2 years before the pandemic. So you're talking about 5 years now. I do not use any other posterior composites anymore except for a single shade. And the bulk of the time I use omnichroma because it's got the longest track record and to me the best track record. I use it for most of my restorations in the front of the mouth as well. For class 3s, it's never a problem. The only things I don't use it for are class 4s. And I know some people seem to be able to do it and they'll put tints and shades in, but it doesn't work really well for me. Now, that said, I've got some good anterior composites that are in small numbers. Like, for example, Tokiyama makes Estelite Omega, which is a marvelous system that only has 11 shades. So instead of stocking the old-fashioned 30 shades, 33 shades, you can stock those 11, maybe not even all of the 11, use the ones that you need the most. But that said, the bulk of what I do is done with single shade composites now.
That's impressive. So, Peter, I've always looked at it with my patients. I've thought in my mind, I'm like, okay, is this patient, do they need 10 out of 10 aesthetics? Or are they pretty happy with an 8.5 and harmony? So opacity, nailing the right opacity seems to be, one of the biggest factors in my world. So how do the single shades manage, that ideal opacity?
Practice, practice, practice.
Love that.
I mean, really, that's what you have to do. You have to figure out what depth of material you want to use. You have to figure out if you're going to be using a blocking agent or an opaquer, whether to use it or not. A little cheating that I do is I happen to love Tokiyama's blocker. I think it's great. Omnichroma blocker. I use that under other companies' composites too. And I find that it works very, very well because it's not your typical opaquer that makes everything look pure white, or if it's a pink opaquer, pure pink, neither of which I like very much. So I find that it really, in general, the single shade cases look better than the ones where I'm trying to figure out, is it really an A1? Is it really an A3? And it never really turns out to be exactly what you want it to be, because you still need thickness and you still need potentially a dentin shade and an enamel shade. And are you going to do that in tooth number 19?
Right.
Question.
No, it's true. And I will say blocker is awesome. I feel like I also love it for screw retained implant crowns. Like I still sometimes have, usually there's some sort of metal in there. I'm still kind of a fan of the PFM implant crown. And you can bring blocker up to that, like right past the metal ceramic margin, and then put omnichroma on top of it, or a single shade system on top of it. And I find that to be so awesome. In fact, I have that now in my custom notes, like my templates, because like that is kind of my go-to for screw retained implant crowns. Even if you have a Teflon tape that's not white, it doesn't matter. It'll block it out, which is awesome.
Did you happen to see my article in another dental magazine other than the one you're the editor of?
Oh my
Because
gosh, I did. And I used it as kindling.
Oh, that's not nice. It's a very nice magazine. Very nice people there.
I'm
But
just
anyway,
joking. I'm just joking.
But anyway, yes, that was what my article was about. And I did it with like 4 or 5 different shades of implant crowns, and how it matches every shade regardless what's underneath it. It's mind-boggling.
It really is. So you said, all right, so class 4s are kind of your, I don't know if I do that there. Some obviously do, and they've kind of mastered using blocker as that, that first layer that we would use with our matrix guided restorations. Definitely it's technique sensitive. So, do it at your own risk. Are there any other times you would not use it?
No. I mean, I do it if the base of the tooth has all kinds of amalgam scarring, because the blocker does a really good job with that. Again, you have to figure out how much blocker to use. And I've learned kind of the sweet spot is anywhere between 0.5 and 1 millimeter. And if you still have 3 millimeters of room or 2.5 millimeters of room for the composite, you're in good shape.
I like that. So you mentioned, you use the blocker underneath other composites as well. How much do you have to vary the thickness of the blocker based on whose composite you're working with, or have you just found that sweet spot?
No, there isn't a sweet spot. It depends on what kind of composite it is.
Right.
One of my other favorites, and I will tell you, as you know, omnichroma is my favorite. One of the other composites I like is Cavo's composite, which is called Simply Shade, which is 3 shades. But like many of the omnichromatic systems other than omnichroma, it's very translucent. So you have to really add to it, or else the translucency is going to come through. Mm-hmm. So there's a very big difference in omnichromatic composites, and there's a difference in other composites out there.
No, that is true. So you said, all right, I just want to know. So what do you have? So you've got, obviously with what you do, you've got all the composites, and I know companies send all of us really a whole bunch of composites that are kind of things that we're using. But I know, as a dentist, there's always those that we kind of reach for. What are you what would you say, throughout your week, what are the main composites that are just your go-to for, all different indications?
I think, first of all, I have this relationship with Tokiyama, and it's not because they help me, it's because they make great composites. So omnichroma is number 1. If I'm doing anything in the anterior, it's usually Omega, Estelite Omega. But there are others that I'm learning about that I really like. There's a brand new one that just came out from Ultradent called Transcend. Have you tried that yet?
I have.
I really like it. I like it really matches colors very, very well. Smaller company, DMG, has something called Ecosite Elements, which is an interesting composite out there. I've been using Admira Fusion Extra, which is a Voco composite that I've liked for quite some time. There's something called One, which, and there are 2 ones there, which I just find is kind of odd that there are 2 ones. They're interesting. Curari has a composite out there that I actually like very much. I just can't think of the name right now, but it's actually pretty good. But in the course of a week, right now, what I'm mainly using is Omnichroma Omega. I'm starting to use this Transcend a lot. I like GC Sculpt a lot as one of my others. Oh, the other one is Evanesce, which is a really cool, really nice system, but it's one of the old-fashioned systems that have a lot of shades.
Yeah, that's clinician's choice, I believe.
It is clinician's choice, but I believe they're not selling it anymore. But there's another company that I think is now selling it. I can't remember who it is. But it always has been a clinician's choice product. I know that my salesperson at my office tried to get some from Clinician's Choice and they couldn't get it.
Oh, weird. All
So
right.
I'm
Well,
not sure where it is now. Yeah.
don't you worry, everybody. I'll find it for you and I'll tell
Find
you
out for
Research
me.
time.
Maybe,
I promise.
maybe they
So,
called the wrong place. I don't know what happened.
oh my
Yeah.
goodness. Wow.
Oh,
So,
yeah. Yeah, go on.
so you're reaching out, so obviously there's a lot of really great ones out there. But your go-tos, are definitely some shades, simplified shades, and then obviously the single shade systems are something you certainly rely upon.
Yeah, my backup in the posterior is Simply Shade, which I think is a really terrific product.
David, what are you finding with the younger dentists? Are they feeling the single shade system, or do they feel the pressure of Instagram to kind of, try to make that AACD? Because honestly, that's another thing. I mean, Peter, you're like the AACD guy, and to hear you using a single shade composite system makes people like me feel better. If you're using it, then I'm like, all right, I'm using it too. Now I can tell people because it's obviously something that's acceptable among the AACD people. So anyway, David, would you say that young dentists are starting to like the simplified systems a little bit more? I think it would make it easier for them.
For sure. And honestly, I think if you said, Pareto's principle, old 80-20. So 80% always loved the simplicity, 20% were showcasing cases, and maybe it's a 90%, 10%. But yeah, young dentists are gravitating towards, how can I be most efficiently aesthetic in what I do? They don't want big kits that are difficult to learn and master, and they're overwhelming. I think there's a lot, they already have enough overwhelm in their world. So the simplicity of shrunken shades and down to one single shade is an amazing opportunity for them. And I think what you shared, Peter, is really, really important, especially if you're a young person who's tried a single shade and didn't really have the good fortune that you anticipated, that it's going to take practice. It's going to take tinkering around based on which single shade you're using, which opacers, blockers, systems that you're using. And I think it behooves us to get really outstanding at one system before we start trying to integrate 10 different systems.
I totally agree. And there are a couple of things about that. First of all, do you find that it's difficult to get former dental students who are out of school to take away the brainwash they got in dental school? Because I'll tell you why. Because I read something that I was really kind of shocked by. And that's that there's one company, and you can tell me whether I can mention the name of the company or not, that basically controls the composites used in virtually every dental school in the United States, which is a brilliant marketing technique, which means that most kids coming out of school, they're going to use what they figure, well, my dental school used it, it's got to be great. And in most cases, it is good, but is it the only one out there? It's certainly not the least expensive out there. And one of the big benefits of single shade composites is price.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, when Omnichroma first came out with their product, they made a product that was lower in price than virtually anything that was on the market before, which is mind-boggling. I mean, no company has ever done that before. And if you're only going to buy a single shade and you're not going to have to get those 33 shades, think of how much money you save in the course of a year, and think of how much waste you're going to lose in a year. So back to my question.
Yeah.
How tough is it to stop the brainwashing that they got in dental school?
I will tell you this, you're spot on, because statistically, I believe the number is like north of 86% of dentists use the same materials and techniques they learned in school for almost 2 decades. That said, I know it's shocking, right, Pam?
That is shocking. I'm
It
actually
is.
surprised to hear that.
It's shocking. However, what I would say is in my experience, whenever we host Ignite events, I've never felt it was my job to say this is the only, this is the best. I love your approach, Peter, to say like, here's some really great companies, and let's get these materials in your hands, hands-on courses, and talk about what you like best about the handling, what don't you like, what you like best about how things are performing and looking. And I found that if you just objectively bring great players to the table, young dentists and dental students are hungry because they almost feel school's big brotherish, you know, and they're mad. And you know, you made a really good point. And I boy, if I'm Tokiyama and I'm listening right now, here's what I would do. Think of the tackle box worth of stuff we all buy as dental students. And in dental students and young dentists who are listening, you'll know this loud and clear, that most of which is there at the end of your D4 year, and you're wondering why in the world you bought it in the first place. And now think about your ability to shrink your composite inventory in the same fashion, so you're not wasting all of these products that people believed you needed when you really don't.
Yeah, it's also best for infection control, because you don't have to have a glob of materials. You don't have to put your hands on the shade guide constantly and pulling the shade tabs out all the time. I mean, there are lots of money that you're saving and lots of time that you're saving.
Yeah,
Most definitely. You know, it's funny. I'm going to tell you something. I still have my tackle boxes.
do you really?
I do. I graduate next year is my 20th year anniversary, or whatever, reunion year from Tufts. And I still have my tackle boxes. And so I've been a dentist for almost 20 years, prosthodontist for whatever, 17, I guess. There's some things in there that I still don't know what they are. And I'm like, why the hell did we even have that? Like, that is so crazy. We definitely could have saved a few dollars in tuition. That's for sure. Here we are all these years later, and I still have like no clue what some of these things are, which is absolutely crazy. And I
So
don't,
I'm sorry.
no, go ahead.
So you guys are a lot younger than me, so you may not remember this particular product, but I was lecturing 2 weeks ago, and I was asking around which composites these people use. One of them was an orthodontist, and one of them was an endodontist. Pretty old. They made me look like I was right out of dental school. I asked them what they use. They were both using Concise. Now, do you have any idea what Concise is?
I remember the name, never used it.
Yes. I
Okay,
remember the name.
Concise was the first composite I ever used. It was used in the 1970s. So forget about the people who are using their same composite 20 years later. Let's try 50. Is that unbelievable? And you would think that the products may have improved. I mean, how many generations since that one? 80? and they're
One or
still
two.
using the same material.
Wow, that's crazy. It's amazing it even still exists.
I know. And I call it, when I lecture, I actually mention it in lectures, because whereas omnichroma, I would say, is the material that matches every tooth. Well, Concise was the white material that matched no teeth. But I found out why they use it, and they use it in some cases because it stays well. It's kind of rough, so it bothers the patient's tongue, which means there's a better chance they'll go back to the dentist to actually fill the endodontic access area.
That is such a dentist answer.
It's almost like making your temporary kind of ugly so that they come back for the permanent.
Exactly. Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
You know, speaking of dentistry on social media and in this product in general, have you guys ever had a dentist reach out and say, that blends too well? How are you supposed to know where the margins are?
Yes.
I don't know how to answer that question. Other than Concise. I just need to go get some Concise.
That's right. Or Adaptic. That was the other one.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. Oh my gosh. Yeah. Well, I mean, truthfully, I mean, we all know that nothing lasts forever. And at some point, every restoration that's placed today will need a replacement at some point. So I get the sentiment of that, but at the same time, I don't know. I cannot stand going back at recares, looking at restorations, and sometimes I'll see one that's a little dodgy, and I always check, and I'm like, is that mine or is that there? And it's, hopefully one that's been there since before they became a patient of mine. But, I would hate that to be one that I look at and I kind of am like, ooh, and I did it. So certainly these single shade composite systems make things a little bit simpler. Yeah, I think I would advocate finding one that suits your handling preferences. I feel like for me, handling's everything. And I guess I feel like I have to bring up the Optrasculpt. I feel like that thing is unbelievable. That is like my go-to for pretty much every single restoration that I use. Like the little round ball for class twos, like packing it into these little interproximal areas. Composite doesn't stick to it. It helps me, I feel like without it, I would be really scared to see my bite wings. And I feel like with it, it's like an unsung hero.
That pad on anteriors, I'm telling you, I've been in a treatment room and for some crazy reason that one moment it wasn't there. And I thought like, I don't think I can restore this tooth. I think I need to take a time out.
Do you use it for placing veneers? Because it's wonderful for that too.
Absolutely.
I love it to hold down restorations. Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah, and I
Awesome.
find, before I cement them, if I see that maybe there's a fingernail thickness of one that's out a little bit too far, if I press that one in with a sculpt and with a second sculpt on the one next door, I know for sure they're going to be even with each other. Yeah, I always look at the occlusal view or the incisal view, and that's the view that tells you whether everything's in the right place.
Wait a minute. So you use two at a time? That's badass.
Yeah, it's cool, right?
Is that double fisting or is that different? I don't know.
I know. They're like, boom, that's super cool. I love that. I need to.
I've got another suggestion for you. Have
Yeah.
either of you heard of the Occlusinator Pro?
Yes, the occlusinator's awesome.
I love it. I absolutely love it. And for all of my just the final work on my cases, on my single shade cases, it's marvelous. And I don't understand why it hasn't just taken over the entire market, because it's the only thing of its kind. For people that haven't seen it before, it's basically a combination of a sculpting device that you use when before the material is set. And then it's a series of these incredibly smooth burrs, like nothing I've ever seen before, that helps you create really nice anatomy. So it does for me, it allows me to make something look like a tooth, the stuff I could never do when I was in dental school. It does it for me. It's incredible.
I love it. It's like an acorn burnisher for amalgam, but in burr form. But there's different, I guess, I don't know what to call it, like different angles. There's like the little narrow one and like the kind of wider one for, say, like, I don't know, like a molar or something like that. And yeah, you just kind of park it in there and it's almost like a depth reduction. Like it won't go that far. And then you can just sort of draw it in. It's awesome.
And now there's one for contouring zirconia crowns too.
Yes.
Very great. Cool. So I believe they're still sold by Strauss Dental, if no one knows where they are. And which surprises me. I don't know anything about Strauss Dental, but they never advertise this thing. And I don't understand why.
It's like our secret. It's like when your patient leaves you and goes to another dentist and they're like, who did that? And you're like, I can't tell you how. It's just, I'm just that good.
But when I do my articles about materials, I always do the final contours with them. And that's why they look so good. It's not because I'm very good at what I do. It's because I got good tools to help me do what I do.
No, but that's gold, really. You think about it. It's, doing it efficiently and doing it well and doing it in a way that's predictable. I mean, that's really what it's all about. I feel like a lot of dentists, that's what we're struggling with on a day-to-day basis. I think you're, whether you're a bell curve dentist or even, better than the bell curve, if you're, if you have a practice loan, if you are, have student loan debt, you are trying, we're all trying to work under the umbrella of the clock and being efficient and trying to reduce overhead. And all of these things just make you do it better, and, have a predictable, favorable outcome, which I think is awesome.
Process is so important. And I think, although dentistry, there's a lot of arts to it, sometimes it's easy for us to get lost in that art. And I'm going to do it the hard way because darn it, I'm capable and not everybody is, instead of just thinking to yourself, there's a more efficient way to tackle this task. And why would I not take the straight line instead of driving around four corners to get there?
It's one of the reasons that I think there's going to be an explosion of heating composites. And so I use Viscolor Plus, which is the first material that was actually designed to be heated. But now that people are doing more injection molding and it's starting to take over, I would assume that other companies are going to come out with materials that aren't just heated, but meant to be heated. And I think that makes a big, big difference.
Well, that brings me to another point. So Omnichroma also has their injectable composite, Omnichroma Bulk Flow, which you could use in one of those injection molded cases, right?
Correct. Yeah, they also have a flow as well, which is just called Omnichroma Flow. I use them for various tasks. I use one of the great things about Omnichroma Flow is that when you're making a temporary crown and there are a couple of glitches in the temporary crown, rather than having a whole bunch of different flowable composites around, you've got one that matches any color. So it just blends right in, which is really perfect. And the Flow Bulk, which was an interesting version of Bulk Flow. I guess someone sat there and said, well, everyone else is a Bulk Flow, I'll make a Flow Bulk. But it's also a very interesting product. I mean, a lot of these bulk fills are really, really an interesting way to fill teeth, and it's kind of the future at work. I agree.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's awesome. No, and I think that's wonderful that there's kind of one system, if you will, that will accommodate a lot of different styles, a lot of different way dentists like to practice, and still keeping it really simple, which is pretty awesome.
It sounds like simple is the name of this game, and repeatable and predictable, which all seem to go hand in hand with each other instead of us trying to make this so darn difficult. It's already hard. It's true.
It's true. And I think those young dentists that you're talking about, this is just such an opportunity for them. They don't have to go in a box and just have to match every tooth. I mean, how depressing is it, even in a posterior tooth, and you're certain it's an A1, and then you put it in the tooth and it's nothing like the color of the rest of the tooth. So, and then you try it, but then if you're really crazy like me, you'll take it out and you'll start again and do it as a dentin shade first, and then an enamel shade over it, and then that doesn't look right. So it's really nice to start with ease of use and then work your way from that to being great technologically.
Makes a lot of sense on my side.
I agree.
Pam, what do you think?
I think we beat this horse. I think that we've made it really clear, right? That keeping it simple, efficient, predictable is the way to go. Obviously, something that's well accepted. If it's got your stamp of approval, Peter, then I think it is a legit approach. So certainly get out there and find your favorite single shade composite system. It might be something you don't even realize that could literally change your practice and make your life so much easier. So, Peter, I'm going to ask you to get that article that I was joking about earlier so I could put a link up to that. I will share it. Also, where can people follow you? How can people reach you?
Well, how can they reach me? On my website is cosmeticdentistry.associates.com. And my email address, I have no problem with people contacting me that way. It's Dr. P. Auster, drpauster@gmail.com.
Awesome. Well, thank you for joining us. I'm so happy to have time to chat with you. Every time we chat with you, it just makes my day. Do you want to take it home, David?
I so appreciate your time, Peter. I love your objective look at dentistry. I love that you do all the things that you do for all the right reasons. There's zero agenda. It's so rare. You're a gem, Pam. It's always great hanging out with you. And everybody, till next time, next week, have a great day wherever you are and make it simple.
Keep it simple. See you next week.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you, everyone, for watching or listening to the show this week. And thanks to our guests and sponsors on this episode.
Please check out our social media at Dr. Pamela_Maragliano and at Dental Economics Official.
Or you can check me out at Ignite DDS or at Dr. David Rice.
And go to dentaleconomics.com to receive dental economics. You can choose to receive DE in print or digitally, and you can also get the details of our Principles of Practice Management conference on our website.
If you have topics or guests or anything you'd like to talk about on the show, send us an email to Dentistry Unmasked podcast@gmail.com, and we will do our very best to make it happen. Thanks again, and we'll see you next week.